Well, that's new. Some red coats hanging about here. Good afternoon YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in Dumfries in Galloway, and I'm headed down towards the English border. I'm not going to go to England, but I'm going to pop into a little castle called Caerlaverock. I'm going to head out through Dumfries. Now, I'm not entirely sure what my destination is going to be today, because today is more about the ride than anything else. I just wanted to get out, and this little village here is called Thornhill. It's really nice actually. But before I get to Dumfries, I'm going to pop into the dealership where I bought this bike actually, because it's on this road. It's only about 10 minutes from here, maybe less. So as I say, I'm not entirely sure exactly what my destination is going to be. Today's more about the ride, but I'm going to head down towards Caerlaverock through Dumfries. You know, we'll have a look at that, have a little chat about it, and then we'll see where the journey takes us. To be honest, there's quite a lot of things to see and do on the way there, so it's probably going to be more than enough for this video, to be honest. And the destination there at Caerlaverock's really nice. Because it's a Saturday, I've got time. I've got more time than I ordinarily do, because I'm sort of chasing sunsets a lot now, you know. And I find myself sort of rushing to get to places and not really able to take it all in, or, you know, film it the way I would like to. Or I'll rush to a place and then I'll be static for quite a while telling a story about it, you know. So let's just get out today. Considering the sort of use this bike gets from me, it's running remarkably well. You know, you don't see it in a lot of my videos, but you will get a flavour of it. I'm off-road quite a lot, pretty much every day to some extent. I'm up a dirt path at the very least, or on the gravel. And more often than not, I'm riding around in fields or on hills looking for something interesting. Folks, this is Holywood Service Station, and if you're in the market for a new Enfield, if you're in southern Scotland or northern England, this is as good as it gets, to be honest. They cover everything from servicing of your vehicles and all that stuff as well. There's always got loads of stock coming in. Yeah. Coffee time. Just sort of chatting to Gordon there. It seems to be the most sort of popular bikes are still your sort of Himalayans. Your Meteors are very popular, you know. A lot of people are buying up the new Meteor 350. A nice little cruiser, but he's selling them faster than he can get them in. So he's extremely busy. So I'm going to phone him towards the end of the week and get the bike booked in, you know, in the next sort of fortnight or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it off and leave it for a few days, 2 or 3 days, because the bike's, by that point, it's going to be hitting 10,000 miles. So we'll get a right good look at it, give it a proper once over. I'm still occasionally getting this little ABS warning light coming on. Some days it'll be on, some days it'll be off. But I should have stored that, whatever that issue is. It's probably an ABS sensor or something. But whatever that issue is, it should be stored in the computer, so we'll get it plugged in and get a look at it. I guess you wouldn't want to fall in there. Here we're in Dumfries, obviously. So many of these old buildings are just hundreds of years old, and the architecture's fabulous. There's churches everywhere, there's a lot of churches. Robert the Bruce bar. Robert the Bruce has a bar, who knew? Again, Dumfries was an important place for Robbie Burns. Robbie Burns spent a lot of time in Dumfries. Alright, so I saw a sign there for Caerlaverock, which tells me I'm headed the right way. Perfect. Shouldn't take long to get there. See this hill through the mist here? I'm headed directly south towards the Solway coast. It's sort of part of that SW300. I'm not great on the tours like the North Coast 500 or the SW300. I get a little bit too curious and end up going too far away off the beaten track, and then don't bother going back on it again. That's an interesting old building. What is that one? Ah, there we go. Caerlaverock Parish Church. I don't think the castle's down there though, but let's go and look at this building. I think the castle's further over. Caerlaverock Churchyard. It's very elaborate actually. I would not be surprised if some of the old lords and ladies of the castle themselves might be buried here. I'll have a look online, and if I can find out what that building is, I'll put it up on the screen. But from here it looks like some kind of castle tower. Wow. And you can see how old these things are. Good old rural Scotland. Buried next to the hay bales. But life must go on, as they say. So I've just come past Caerlaverock Parish Church, so that tells me I must be very close. Look at this little place. 2 miles. There's also a nature reserve here, which is pretty cool. Straight ahead. I love these little villages. Well, because that mix of sort of new and old, you know, all the new houses built around all the old ones. So what's this saying? Bus turning area. Well, we don't want that. We want to go here. Now that's an old gatehouse if ever I've seen one. Oh, what? Wow. And that'll be that then. Give me 1 second.
We're not charging tickets.
Sorry?
We're not charging.
So the original Castle Hill was built around sort of 1220 by the Maxwells, but it was abandoned around 1270, 1277, something like that. And that's because it was becoming too wet, too boggy. Apparently the buildings here were starting to sink. If you can imagine, the sea levels are higher at that time, so this is part of the Solway. This is the sea that's actually up around here. I'm standing in what would have been the hall. Then over here we've got, they're calling this the chamber, so I guess that would have been the sort of living quarters, or whoever the lord was at the time, the Maxwells. It's sitting on what was quite obviously an island. You know, when you look around, this was all flooded at the time. Look over here, just as an example. You know, we've got Castle Ditch, and that would have been filled with water. And you can see how obvious it is. Even today, 800 years later, sort of 700 years later. Amazing. This would effectively have been the ocean just over behind these trees. So you can see how once the building started to sink, they moved to the newer building, which is about 200 metres further up the hill here. So here you can see the newer building. It's obviously not particularly new. This castle here was under siege several times in its history. Probably the most famous one was the Scottish Wars of Independence. The garrison of about 60 men here held out against a huge English force. And that English force was led by Edward Longshanks himself, you know, the old hammer of the Scots. This castle looks a little bit fairy tale-esque, but it's easy to see why it was such a tough nut to crack, you know, sitting in its own little lake here, with this outer ditch, and then another ditch filled with water, or I don't know, alligators or whatever. What did you put in medieval ditches to keep people away? I don't know. But anyway, stunning place, a stunning building. Well, that's new. Some redcoats hanging about here. This particular castle here at Caerlaverock is unusual in that it's got a triangular design. Now that's quite unusual in the whole of Britain, never mind here in Scotland. Now it's fair to say that this castle has had a tumultuous history. It's owing to the fact that it's a border stronghold, yeah, it sits right on the border between Scotland and England. So it's in quite a vulnerable position, you might say, particularly with the toing and froing and the wars that went back and forth across the border here over the years. Now over the centuries the castle was won and lost time and time again, but two sieges in particular stand out. And the first one is when Edward Longshanks himself came here in 1300. Now Edward Longshanks, the hammer of the Scots, he was not exactly renowned for his leniency, yeah. But when he discovered it was a garrison of only 60 men here that had been holding out against the English forces, rather than have them all executed, which would have been his norm, he hanged a handful. So from that we can guess maybe around 5 to 10 people. And then the rest of the garrison was allowed to go free. So the castle was under English control up until 1312. So in 1312, when they retake the castle, Robert the Bruce asks the Maxwells to demolish it, just in case it gets retaken by the English again and used against them in Scotland's Wars of Independence. So the Maxwells do exactly that. They damage the castle in such a way that it can't be used against the Scots if it's retaken again by English forces. So this castle then remains vacant until around 1332. So between the 13th and the 16th century you start to see the Maxwells build this fortress up into what we see today. So the Maxwells were the wardens of the march. And that basically means that it was their job to defend southwest Scotland against invasion. So it's easy to see how this castle here would be amongst the first line of defence. It's a real shame we can't go inside this building. It is absolutely stunning when you see what it looks like from the inside. The castle came under siege for one final time in 1640, and that's because the Maxwells were staunch Catholics. So the castle here was actually under siege or besieged for 13 weeks by a force of Covenanters. This time the garrison here was about 200 strong. It's a fair sized building, but it's difficult to imagine up to 200 men in here defending this for 13 weeks. This time round there was to be no leniency. When the garrison here finally capitulated and handed over the castle, they were put to the sword, all except for the Maxwells themselves. And the victorious Covenanters proceeded to pull down the south tower and the south wall here, the south curtain wall. And that was essentially it for Caerlaverock. It was never to be rebuilt again. So what you're seeing here was the result of the end of that siege in 1640.